Today on the Matt Walsh Show, a far-left terrorist blew up a fertility clinic in California a few days ago. This event is not an aberration. The left is anti-human all the way up to the highest levels of the movement. Also, Trump's DOJ files criminal charges against the congresswoman who assaulted an ICE agent. The mayor of Chicago announces that he prefers to hire black people because they are more generous. And 10 inmates escaped from a jail in New Orleans. Most of them still have not been caught. Is this another case of dysfunctional DEI leadership? We'll talk about all that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. Debt doesn't just show up one day. It builds little by little: credit cards, car loans, medical bills, and suddenly you're juggling payments, feeling stuck. But here's the good news. You're not stuck. You just need a reset. American Financing, they help homeowners just like you every day. They use your home's equity and roll that high-interest debt into one simple, affordable payment. They're saving homeowners an average of $800 a month. No judgment, no pressure, just real solutions that put you back in control. Imagine breathing again, sleeping again, knowing your future is yours to shape. Starts with one call. It only takes 10 minutes to get started. There are no upfront fees, so it costs nothing to find out how much you can save. And if you start today, you may be able to delay your next 2 mortgage payments. American Financing salary-based consultants are ready to listen and ready to help. Take back your peace of mind with American Financing. Call American Financing today, 866-569-4711. That's 866-569-4711, or visit americanfinancing.net/Walsh. Well, it was just a few days ago that we discussed the extreme level of disdain that Democrats were displaying seemingly out of nowhere towards a small number of white refugees who are arriving in the United States. All at once, the same people with the yard signs that proclaim no one is illegal and love is love were suddenly overcome with bloodlust, all because a handful of Afrikaners landed at Dulles Airport. In the history of mask-off moments in this country, this one ranks pretty high on the list. It's a bit like when the Manson family single-handedly destroyed the reputation of the hippie movement, because once you start talking about murdering people or actually murdering people, you can't really recover from it. No one's going to buy your peace and love shtick ever again. They're going to see you exactly for who you are. And in the case of the Afrikaners, what underlies the race hatred on the left is their transparent desire to see all of Western civilization crumble. Everyone understands that now. They want to import Somali fraudsters and Central American gangsters while turning away white farmers, precisely because they know that the white farmers will improve this country while the criminals will destroy it. There's never been another point in American history where the political divide has been so stark. On one side, you got one side that wants the United States to prosper, while the other wants the entire continent to devolve into a dysfunctional wasteland. They want to bring ruin to one of the few remaining functional countries on the planet. And what this means is that, in essence, Democrats have adopted nihilism. They're nihilists. They do not believe that human life has any inherent worth or purpose. They reject truth and objectivity in all contexts. They're anti-human. And they're no longer being very subtle about it. For years, it's been evident that nihilists and pro-human conservatives have been on a collision course. And after all, these are not remotely compatible ideologies. They're not capable of coexisting in one place for any significant amount of time. Humanity, simply by existing, enrages the anti-human nihilists. And these nihilists are realizing that despite their best efforts, there's only so much destruction you can achieve by importing the third world and murdering children in the womb. Therefore, it's only a matter of time until one of these nihilists decides to take matters into his own hands and commit an act of terrorism. And on Saturday morning, that's exactly what happened. So just before noon, less than an hour from downtown Palm Springs, California, a 25-year-old man detonated a vehicle-borne explosive device in the car park outside a fertility clinic called American Reproductive Centers. And according to the authorities, the result was the largest bombing scene that we've had in Southern California. Several people were injured, offices were damaged, although the lab at the fertility clinic, which houses the eggs and embryos, was not affected. I mean, that was like the actual target here, but that was not affected. One man was thrown from his bike, and the impact was felt 2 miles away. Watch.
A community in shock after a devastating explosion outside a fertility clinic in Palm Springs that police say was intentional.
Make no mistake, this is an intentional act of terrorism.
The blast field extending for blocks from the alleged target of the explosion, the American Reproductive Center's fertility clinic.
We have large explosion with the building compromised.
Police say the incident happened shortly after 11 a.m. Saturday when a car parked near the clinic exploded.
That one vehicle looks like it is on its roof with multiple explosions.
The blast ripping through the building.
Oh my God, what happened? There are blocks of debris.
Now, you can listen to that whole news report and you won't find any explanation of the suspects' motives. And you know why that is. It's highly inconvenient for these people to tell the truth about left-wing terrorism because they're still trying to convince everyone that white supremacy is the greatest threat facing the country. So here is the truth. The bomber left behind extensive writings and audio recordings on the internet, but meticulously explaining that he committed this act of terrorism as part of a, quote, war against pro-lifers. Those are his words. And he says that the Bible is slander against Satan, that God is a, quote, creep, and that, quote, your God definitely doesn't exist, but if he did, I'd choose Satan over your evil God. The bomber also states that he wants to begin the process of, quote, sterilizing this planet of the disease of life. There's also reportedly some rage against Elon Musk, who famously opposes the depopulation of the planet. A day before the attack, according to researcher Aaron Cruz, the bomber openly posted his plans on a message board devoted to sanctioned suicide, which is a thing that exists, a message board. And he posted right down to the precise bomb-making techniques that he planned to use and how he planned to be, high on opiates at the time of the explosion. But apparently no one reported the post, even though several people liked it and responded to it. And if this reporting is accurate, and it appears to be, then it's obviously yet another indictment of our intelligence services. It's also a sign of how pervasive this anti-human death cult is. There are entire communities devoted to ending the human race. And even when they're talking about acts of terrorism, no one's paying any attention to them. But we should be paying attention to them because what happened on Saturday was not an aberration. Nihilism is the guiding ethos of the elite, which is why every day they're promoting it in one context or another. And maybe the most striking case involves the left's current effort to secure the murder of a 21-week-old child in the state of Georgia. Now, here's the background. In February, a 30-year-old woman named Andriana Smith was 9 weeks pregnant when she began suffering from severe headaches. She went to the hospital, which gave her medications and sent her home. And the next day, according to her boyfriend, she began gasping for air and making gurgling noises. A CT scan showed that she had multiple blood clots in her brain. As of now, she's 21 weeks pregnant, and she's brain dead, tragically. And she's being kept alive on a ventilator for months so that she can give birth. In other words, the doctors are doing everything they can to preserve the life of the unborn child. There are 2 lives here at stake, and it looks like, tragically, they're not going to be able to save the mother, but they can save the child, and so they're trying to do that. Now, this is an outcome that, unless you're a demon who despises humanity, you would obviously support. The alternative is to kill the child intentionally, solely because his mother is brain dead. But that alternative outcome is precisely what the corporate press is pushing for. In fact, it also appears to be what the woman's family is pushing for. The woman's mother, April Newkirk, just gave an interview with NBC News where she suggested that they might want to kill the child because of the possibility that it will be difficult to raise him. Watch.
It's torture for me. I come here and I see my daughter breathing by the ventilator, but she's not there. And I'm touching her. And she has a son who I bring to see her.
Now, 21 weeks pregnant, her baby's health uncertain.
She's pregnant with my grandson, but my grandson may be blind, may not be able to walk, wheelchair bound. We don't know if he'll live once she has him.
A situation she says no one should be forced into.
It should have been left up to the family because I'm in my 50s, her dad is in his 50s, so we're going to have the responsibility with her partner to raise her sons, And I'm not saying that we would have chose to terminate her pregnancy. What I'm saying is we should have had a choice. We should have had a choice.
So usually they say my body, my choice. In this case, it's her body, my choice is what the grandmother is saying. The other thing you'll notice from the family here and from the corporate press is they're not even really claiming that this is what the woman, the mother, would want. Like, obviously, I don't think there's any woman on the planet, any pregnant woman on the planet who, if she became brain dead, would actually want her baby to die also. Okay? Like, if she had, before going unconscious, let's say she had a few seconds where she could express her wishes, is there any chance that her dying wish would be, oh, make sure my baby also dies? So they're not even pretending that they want to do what the actual mother wants. This is what they want. So you can tell what's going on here. She understands that if she comes out and tells doctors to murder her own grandchild, everybody will immediately recognize what a cartoonishly evil goblin she is. So instead, she suggests that she just wants the choice to decide whether to kill her grandchild without saying definitively whether she'd follow through with it. Never mind the fact that obviously the only reason she'd want the choice is so that she can exercise that choice. I mean, you wouldn't be clamoring for the choice to kill someone unless you planned on doing it. And that's evident by the end of the interview where she states that she's in her 50s and therefore she's incapable of taking care of a child. One of the excuses she uses to murder her own grandchild is, oh, I'm in my 50s and so is my husband, so how could I possibly help raise the child? Better kill him instead. Now, just pause to consider the implications of that statement for a second and then realize that a major television network aired it sympathetically, as if there's nothing deranged and demonic about it. She's looking at one tragedy, the death of her daughter, which is a terrible tragedy, and then openly requesting the opportunity to kill another family member, another member of her family. I mean, there are women in their 90s who would leap at the opportunity to help raise their grandchild, especially if it meant saving his life. Especially if the other option was to kill him. But this woman's just too old for that, apparently. Of course, if she were in her 20s or 30s, then we'd be hearing about how the grandchild is too inconvenient for her career or whatever. So people like this will rationalize murder in one way or another. That's a given. Now, to be as fair as possible to this very evil person, she does offer another excuse besides being in her 50s. She also says that it's possible her grandchild might be blind and may not be able to walk. And therefore, we're supposed to sympathize with her decision to kill the child because he might be disabled. I mean, what she's saying is, my grandchild might be disabled, and so I'd rather probably just kill him. Now, in a functioning moral society, this woman would be in prison for plotting to kill her disabled grandchild. I mean, at the very least, she'd be receiving a psych evaluation as we speak. Instead, she's being encouraged to say all this. And the corporate press and the left are completely behind her. And of course, that's why she's doing it. She's flippantly justifying the murder of her own grandchild because for her whole life, she's been told that it's her right to commit murder. And she lacks the moral character and intelligence to come to any other conclusion. Now, for Democrats in the media, this angle is pretty clear. They're suggesting that Georgia's heartbeat law, which bans abortions after roughly 6 weeks in most cases, has resulted in a dystopian scenario where women are being chained to beds and forced to give birth. They're not talking about the life of the child at all. They're not even discussing the extraordinary circumstances involved in this particular case. Instead, they're pretending that women are going to be lined up, enslaved, and turned into baby-making machines at scale. Now, here's one representative social media post that has more than 5 million views and hundreds of thousands of likes. It says, quote, "Remember the episode in The Handmaid's Tale where a brain-dead black handmaid is kept on life support enough to give birth? This is happening in Atlanta, Georgia right now. Her name is Adriana Smith. She was only 9 weeks when the state kidnapped her body from her family," close quote. Yes, the state kidnapped her body from her family, according to this post. Of course, they omit any explanation of what actually happened. They don't explain that the alternative is to murder the child. Instead, we just get a pop culture reference. And this really, gets at a larger problem, which is that there's a high proportion of the population that's only capable of engaging in any kind of moral reasoning by using analogies to recent works of fiction. This is how Democrats are taught to think. And of course, they dutifully obey. But it's not how the leaders of the Democrat Party think. I mean, they're more intelligent and more evil. And if you listen to them long enough, they'll explain exactly what they have in mind for the future of this country. They won't simply embrace the so-called great replacement theory. They'll go into great detail, explaining why it's bad for Americans to have nuclear families and to believe in Christ. They'll also elaborate on why it's better for foreigners to come into this country and have large families to replace all the natives. Here's Hillary Clinton recently, for example. Listen to this.
As I posted the other day, this very blatant effort to basically send a message, most exemplified by Vance and Musk and others, that, what we really need from you women are more children. And what that really means is you should go back to doing what you were born to do, which is to produce more children. But if you had read the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, despite Trump saying he knew nothing about it, if you had read it, it's all in there. It's all in there. Return to the family, the nuclear family, return to being a Christian nation, return to, producing a lot of children, which is sort of odd because the people who produce the most children in our country are immigrants, and they want to deport them. So none of this adds up. But, one of the reasons why our economy did so much better than comparable advanced economies across the world is because we actually had a replenishment, because we had a lot of immigrants, legally and undocumented, who had a, larger than normal, by American standards, families.
So we've been having a lot of mask off moments lately on the left, and this is one of the more revealing ones. Notice what she's not saying. She's not explaining what's wrong with Christianity. She's also not explaining why it's wrong to advocate for stable two-parent households. 20 years ago, this would have been an issue that 100% of Americans would agree on. I mean, every single person would have told you that intact two-parent households are a good thing. But now we have one of the most prominent Democrats in the world stating, as if it's obvious to everyone, that it's bad to advocate for Christian nuclear families. And then she immediately reveals exactly what she doesn't like about the nuclear family. She wants illegal aliens, who she calls undocumented, to replenish the American population. She wants this country to lose its national identity as quickly as possible, and the nuclear family stands in the way of that. Of course, even if Hillary Clinton really believed that foreign nationals are a net benefit to the American economy, which they aren't, there's still no reason whatsoever for her to advocate against stable American families. I mean, that part of her argument is completely unexplained. You'd think if this, that she would support foreign migration in addition to American families, but she doesn't. She only supports the illegal aliens because she knows that eventually they will completely replace this country's population. And once they do that, every country will be just as dysfunctional as Somalia and Haiti and Venezuela. Food shortages and diseases will spread and millions of people will die. Hillary Clinton knows all that, and she's doing everything in her power, which is thankfully limited at the moment, to make it happen. And that tells you, for at least the third time this week, that Democrats are fundamentally an anti-human party. They reject the idea that human life has any intrinsic value. They also despise Western civilization. They see third world migration as a way to destabilize and destroy it. And antinatalism is the core plank of this ideology. It's evident in the terrorist attack in California. It's evident in this deranged effort by a grandmother to unlock the option of murdering her own grandchild. And it's evident if you listen to Hillary Clinton speak for 5 seconds. This is a worldview that has taken hold at every level of the left. And it's only sustainable because most people don't see the full scope of what's happening. But for the sake of the future generations that these people badly don't want to exist, it's time to start paying attention. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of September 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. Last week, we talked about the story of Democrat Representative LaMonica McIver, who assaulted an ICE agent while trying to storm into an ICE detainment center, along with a number of other Democrats. And I said at the time, lots of us said, that McIver needs to be held accountable. And the same way that any of us would be held accountable if we did the same thing, which means criminal charges. And now that's exactly what's happened. Daily Wire reports on Monday, the Department of Justice announced that Representative LaMonica McIver has been charged in connection with a scuffle at an Immigration and Customs Enforcement detention facility in Newark, New Jersey, earlier this month. Acting U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey, Alina Habba, said, today my office has charged Congresswoman McIver with violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 111A1 for assaulting, impeding, and interfering with law enforcement. So that's the announcement, which is very good. And naturally, Democrats are responding to this by trying to turn McIver into a martyr. You know, she's the new Rosa Parks or something because she's being prosecuted for committing a crime. Ted Lieu tweeted this: the criminal charge against Congresswoman McIver is extreme, morally bankrupt, and lacks any basis in law or fact. This is a blatant attempt to intimidate Congress and interfere with our ability to serve as checks and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. Eric Swalwell agreed. He said, he tweeted, a red line has been crossed. Trump is prosecuting his political enemies in Congress. This is just the beginning. We must take whatever we've done before to show dissent and go one rung higher. Whatever the hell that means. So just totally shameless, as expected. The people who prosecuted the president are now accusing him of prosecuting his political enemies. And of course, the difference is that Trump didn't actually commit a crime. Meanwhile, this woman committed a crime on camera. We can all see it. It's right there. She throws an elbow and shoves an ICE officer in an effort to gain illegal entry into a federal building. That's a crime. That's a crime in like 6 different ways. And you'll notice that no one is actually offering any legal defense of this person. No one is explaining why her actions don't constitute a crime. No one's doing that. No one is saying, well, no, it was totally, completely legal for her to violently storm an immigrant detention facility because, XYZ. There's none of that. They're not even attempting to defend it on the merits. Their position is that basically, yeah, she committed an obvious crime. We can all see it, but she should be allowed to do it. And it's a ridiculous position, but it's not so ridiculous when you consider that this is the privilege Democrats and their political allies have been given for a long time. So they just assumed that it would continue this way. But it looks like things are changing, thankfully. All right, so the media has been scrambling to figure out a narrative in light of the news that Biden is dying of cancer and almost certainly had it and knew he had it through the entirety of his presidency. Perhaps the worst cover-up in the history of American politics. So they're trying to figure out a way to kind of massage the message on this thing. And so here's what they've come up with. Here's the medical expert, quote unquote, on CBS News offering the closest thing to an excuse that they can muster. And let's listen to it.
Thought it took a while to do that. Wouldn't he be getting regular checkups?
Yeah, so it depends on the kind of cancer you're talking about here. We do know it's quite aggressive again. So the time in which it would take to spread to the bones is going to be shorter than with a less aggressive cancer. And he's 82. Normally, doctors will stop screening for prostate cancer at 75 or so because after that, the prostate cancers you typically pick up are very slow growing. And so the harms of all of the testing and treatment for something that may not kill you, you're talking about risk versus benefit. It may not be worth the risk.
Isn't there a blood test that men can take to know if they have an issue that might warrant further examination? So
there's something that we call a PSA test, but that can also be indicative of many different things. It could just be you have an enlarged prostate. Maybe you have a low-grade infection in the prostate. There are many things that can cause that. And so this is, again, why after a certain age, doctors will typically stop screening for prostate cancer.
Wow.
But in his case, it's not screening. It's important to emphasize this was diagnostic because he had urinary symptoms. And so there was a reason to do more testing.
Quickly, what is your final message to men of a certain age?
So that's what they're going with. They must have stopped screening Biden because he was really old. That's what they're going with. And this excuse, of course, ignores the fact that, first of all, the initial screening, as we heard there, involves a blood test. There isn't much risk involved in taking a blood test. And second, he's the president of the United States. Okay, his screenings are going to be much more thorough, or they should be much more thorough than what most men his age would get. So there's this gaslighting of talking about him as if he's just as if he's like a random retiree. And well, typically what doctors will do, it's not typical. He's the president. So if you're a normal 80-year-old man and you aren't the president and you're retired and, just hanging out with your grandchildren every day, which is what Joe Biden should have been doing, then I can understand having the attitude that you're not going to go and get a bunch of screenings and checkups all the time. I mean, you're 80 and you probably have a bunch of health problems at that age. You don't have much time left on earth regardless. So why obsess over health screenings? Just go live your life. You're going to be dead most likely within 5 or 10 years, no matter what you do. And I'm not saying that elderly people should neglect their health entirely or commit like slow motion suicide, obviously. I'm just saying that I would understand why at 80, you may not bother being super aggressive with like constant health screenings and everything. So that makes sense, unless you're the president, obviously. So here's what I'll say. I think they knew about this and they covered it up. I think that's what happened. But there is one version of the they didn't know story that is plausible. There's one plausible version of that story, and it's this: that maybe they didn't actually know about the cancer officially because maybe they specifically didn't screen him for cancer or any other serious health problem because they knew, based on his age and his obvious deterioration, that he almost certainly had serious health problems, and they didn't want to find evidence of them, which they would then have to hide or report to the public. So, I could see a scenario maybe where they essentially covered up Biden's cancer by just making sure to never check, under the assumption that he probably did have cancer. And that would be a cover up with plausible deniability. Because at the age of 80, your chance of having prostate cancer is really high. It's like very high. And when you look like Biden and you're clearly falling apart, then it's like virtually guaranteed that there's some kind of cancer going on and there's all kinds of stuff going on. So maybe they just made sure to never check. They covered up the illness while giving themselves plausible deniability by never officially discovering the illnesses that they knew were there, but they just didn't check because they didn't, they didn't want the evidence of it that they would then have to do something with. So there's a scenario I could see where that's still a cover up. I mean, that doesn't let them off the hook at all. That would be, I guess, another way of, that would be the most clever way of going about this diabolical plan to keep an elderly sick man in office and hide it from the American people. The cleverest and safest way would be just that. Just like, okay, we're going to do a health screening. We're doing a health screening, but we're going to do it in a way that it's guaranteed we're not going to find any problems. So so when he went in for his 6-month checkups or whatever it is, and we got and the doctor came back and said that he's the healthiest man on the planet. What did that screening involve? What were they actually doing? Were they running this whole battery of tests and then just hiding the results? As I said, I think that's possible they did that. But if you're involved in a plot like this, that's not the smartest way. That's a pretty dumb way to do it. The smarter way to do it is just to say, okay, do a health screening. listen to his lungs and check his blood pressure, and let's do a weight. We'll put him on the scale, and we'll call it a day, and that'll be the screening. So maybe that's what happened. Okay, we've already heard about the Trump DOJ prosecuting a Democrat for trying to storm an immigrant detention center. Well, it's also been announced that they are investigating as well the mayor of Chicago for something entirely separate. They're investigating the mayor of Chicago because the mayor of Chicago admitted to engaging in racial discrimination in hiring. So here is Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, speaking at a church over the weekend. And just listen to how absolutely blatant and shameless this guy is. Listen to this.
Some detractors that will push back on me and say, the only thing that the mayor talks about is the hiring of black people. No, what I'm saying is when you hire our people, we always look out for everybody else. We are the most generous people on the planet. I don't know too many cultures that have play cousins. That's how generous we are. We just make somebody a family member, right? This is how we are. And so business and economic neighborhood development, the deputy mayor is a black woman. Department of Planning and Development is a black woman. Infrastructure deputy mayor is a black woman. Chief operations officer is a black man. Budget director is a black woman. Senior advisor is a black man. And I'm laying that out because when you ask, how do we ensure that our people get a chance to grow their business?
Okay, so is this a crime? Did this scumbag just confess to a crime? Yes, obviously. It's not even close to borderline. There's not even an interesting discussion to be had about it. These are civil rights violations all day long. He just confessed on camera as an elected official that he prioritizes hiring members of his own race, and he prioritizes them because he thinks they're better people. He thinks they're more generous. This is not legal at all. I mean, he should be removed from office and imprisoned. This is a crime that he's confessed to. And, I can buy that oftentimes it's difficult to prosecute the anti-white racists in government, even though there's so many of them. And sometimes it might be practically difficult to do because it's hard to prove that they had racist motives. Like you can observe all day that that all they do is hire black women, in all these positions. I mean, you could, so without Mayor Johnson saying any of that, you could look at at the government that he's assembled and all the positions that he's appointed, and you could see that it's like nothing but black women, and it's like there's no way that happened accidentally. But it's hard to prove intent. Well, in this case, Brandon Johnson has done us the great favor of offering a full confession on camera. He specifically told us that he hires black people over white people because he thinks his own people, quote unquote, are more generous. So it's right there. I mean, he needs to go to prison, not just removed from office, prison. Now, here's the other part that goes without saying, but I will say it. And I hate using this phrase because I know I sound like an impotent, Republican pundit going, imagine if the roles were reversed. Can you imagine if the roles were reversed? But, well, yeah, imagine if the roles are reversed. I mean, and this is important because it helps us to understand what's happening in the culture right now. So let's game this out. Let's imagine that, say, Andrew Cuomo becomes the next mayor of New York. And then imagine that he goes on camera and says, imagine Andrew Cuomo, if he's the next mayor of New York, saying, when you hire our people, white people, we always look out for everyone. We white people are the most generous people on the planet. Our people are so generous. And so, yes, the deputy mayor is a white man. The Department of Planning and Development is a white man. Chief operations officer is a white man. Senior advisor is a white man. And I do this because this is how you ensure that our people get a chance to grow their business. I mean, if Andrew Cuomo said that, he would not survive the day, politically, professionally, maybe even physically. There would be riots in the street. It would be the only thing the media talked about for the next 7 weeks. Everybody would condemn him loudly. Everybody on all sides. But Mayor Johnson says this exact thing, and the reaction is not anywhere close to that. I mean, most people just accept it. The media accepts it. The media celebrates it, if anything. In fact, if a white politician can't even speak highly of white people in this way, even if he's complimenting other races to the same degree. Now, Brandon Johnson explicitly said that black people are the most generous. They are better than other races. That's what he just said. But a white politician couldn't even say, like, yeah, black people are great and very generous, and Hispanic people are great and they're very generous and good people. And, you know, white people too are great people and they're very generous. Even that would be a major controversy. We all know that. A white politician, a white person in general, is not allowed to praise his own race at all. Period. Like, you cannot say something positive. To use the word white people in a sentence followed by something positive is considered deeply controversial at best. Meanwhile, you've got Brandon Johnson, who's not some Twitter troll, right? He's the mayor of one of the biggest cities in the country, and we hear overt, explicit anti-white bias. So here's the point. This is not sustainable. You know, the dynamic where every race and ethnicity on the planet advocates explicitly for themselves shows blatant favoritism, often explicit racism, while at the same time, white people are told that they can't even notice their own race at all. That's just not sustainable. It cannot work this way. You cannot have black politicians openly announcing that they favor their own race, while at the same time insisting that white people must have absolutely no positive feelings about their own race at all. It doesn't work. And before we even get into the question of whether this is such a dynamic is actually desirable, which it isn't, the more salient point is that it's not possible. It's not possible to sustain this kind of selective colorblindness. It can't work that way. It just can't. A society cannot sustain this kind of wildly out of balance standard. Everything will level out. Everything flattens out eventually. It cannot be avoided. So when you hear people, even on the right, and there's a lot of this on the right in particular right now, lamenting the rise of white racial consciousness. Well, yeah. I mean, what did you expect? It's actually inevitable. Now, I'm not sure that a society without racial tribalism is possible. You know, there's no evidence on the planet of such a thing ever really existing. But I know for certain that you can't have a society where every race is tribal except one. That just can't exist. It just cannot. It's not a thing that can exist. And given that it's a wildly out of balance standard, it's also not desirable. We shouldn't even be trying to make such a society exist where there's this wildly out of balance standard applied. Whatever the standard is, it should be applied to everybody. So, a society where black people and Asians and Hispanics and indigenous, all races and ethnicities, talking about how great they are and how proud of themselves they are, while white people, if they talk about their whiteness at all, are only allowed to say negative things about it. That is not a desirable goal in the first place. And again, for the millionth time, it can't happen. It cannot work that way. It just can't. This is crazy. This is insane. And regardless of what you want or don't want, here's the other thing. Standards need to be applied equally, period. No matter the standard. And if you like the standard, then you should want the standard to apply to everybody. So if the standard is that, it's acceptable for a person, even an elected leader, to speak highly of their own race and to refer to their race as our people, as Brandon Johnson does. If you like that standard, right? If you listen to that clip and you go, yeah, I think that's how people should talk. Well, then again, you should want that to be applied to everybody. If you don't like that standard, if you listen to that clip and you go, that's horrible, I don't want people talking that way. Well, again, you should want the standard to be applied to everyone, because the only way to expose a bad standard is for it to be equally applied. So, however you feel about the standard, however you feel about it, the solution cannot be, okay, well, I don't like it, but yeah, we'll let them do it, but not them over there. Nope. Doesn't work. Cannot do it that way. You cannot have a society that works that way. It just can't happen. So, and so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this attempt at this totally insane, unsustainable dynamic. It is just falling apart because it was always destined to. And what's the answer on the other side of it? Well, as I say about everything, one standard for everybody. That's the answer. One standard for everybody. All right, let's get to the comment section.
If you're a man, it's required that you grow a beard. Hey, we're the sweet baby gang.
Aging creeps into everyday life in ways that you hardly notice at first. The mornings take a bit longer. You find yourself needing more recovery time after activities. You start choosing the comfortable shoes without a second thought. I certainly don't age myself, and I'm still in my prime, but for the rest of you, luckily, there's Qualia Life to take the edge off of getting old. Qualia Senolytic is a formula that's been clinically tested to help your body get rid of those pesky senescent cells naturally, so you can age more gracefully. These cells are basically what cause all those annoying aging symptoms we deal with. The aches and pains, taking forever to bounce back after a workout, that mental and physical sluggishness that makes you think, is this what middle age feels like? Well, it helps tackle all of that. Plus, it's not some annoying supplement that you have to remember to take every single day. You only need to take it for 2 days each month, and it helps your body naturally eliminate senescent cells. Plus, made from 9 plant-derived compounds, Qualia keeps each formula vegan, non-GMO, and gluten-free. Experience the science of feeling younger. Go to qualialife.com/Walsh for up to 50% off your purchase, and use code Walsh for an additional 15% off. That's QUALIA life.com/Walsh for an extra 15% off your purchase. Your older self will thank you. And thanks to Qualia for sponsoring this episode. Matt, I'm 6'5", moderately attractive face, and have visible abs. I've only had about 15 matches in the past 3 years on dating apps. I have much better luck in person when it comes to attracting women. When it comes to online dating as a man, if you aren't absolutely perfect, don't even try. It will kill your self-esteem. You have to be physically attractive, financially successful, have good pictures and hobbies. By the time you figure this out, you won't even have the motivation to keep trying, because you'll realize how shallow people can be when you're reduced to pixels on a screen. Well, yeah, that's the problem. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this way. I mean, there is a way to approach online dating and dating sites and dating apps that actually facilitates meaningful connections and gives decent guys a chance. I don't know enough about the current dating app marketplace to say whether any of those kinds of sites still exist. eHarmony used to be like that. I have no clue if it still is. But generally, yeah, that's the problem. And certainly with apps like Tinder, it's the problem. And I think the answer, like I said yesterday, is to start looking out in the real world. Another comment says, as far as dating for men goes, I don't believe in giving up, and men should work on themselves by working out, making more money, etc. However, if online dating is so unfair to men and approaching women in real life is such a liability with accusations and attitude, I really don't know what he expects most guys to do. I personally don't feel that I should put up with the nonsense and disrespect so many women are dishing out. I just have too much sense and respect for myself to allow anyone to treat me like that. Well, you said it in your first sentence. You don't believe in giving up. Neither do I. Giving up is not a solution. It is the opposite of a solution. It's an anti-solution. And also, let's be real about this. Yes, in the post-Me Too era, there is a certain risk involved in approaching women in real life, but it's not a major liability most of the time if you're a smart person. I mean, you should be able to talk to women without being accused of sexual harassment. I mean, like millions of men talk to women every day without being accused of sexual harassment. It's possible to do that even now. And I'm not saying that false claims don't happen. They obviously do. But, and yes, there are women who are kind of conditioned through feminist propaganda to see, any even a guy being polite as him harassing her. So all that is true. But I don't think it's as though the situation is so bad that a man just simply can't even speak to a woman anymore without being branded a sex predator or something. Because again, I mean, it is possible to do. Guys do this every single day, millions of times a day, every day. So it is possible. And I think the real reason that single guys don't talk to women, I don't think it's mainly because they're afraid they'll get Me Too'd. I think it's just because they're nervous. Right? It's kind of your standard social anxiety that anybody has. The thing about the dating app is that, as we talked about yesterday, a guy got rejected 2 million times, and that's pretty demoralizing, and it adds up after a while. But you don't really feel like you feel the cumulative weight of all of those rejections, but you don't feel each individual rejection because it's not happening to you. It's being facilitated through this app, and everybody's just pixels on a screen. Being rejected in person by someone is a lot more painful, and so I think that's the real reason that guys don't do it. But I mean, you got to get over that fear if you don't want to be alone forever. Donovan says, I think two of the biggest issues young men are facing today are, one, the rise of unrealistic standards from some women, and two, a widespread lack of self-awareness among men when it comes to how they interact with women. The second point has become especially noticeable. Too many guys embody the Tinder bro stereotype, thinking that their frat boy charm and surface level confidence are enough to attract women. In reality, that approach falls flat. Women are looking for more than just someone who can provide and protect, although those things still matter. They also want a man who's intellectually engaging, someone who can hold a meaningful conversation and demonstrate critical thinking. Yes, it's true that modern dating comes with challenges. Social media, DMs, and hypersexualized content create a weird dynamic that doesn't always work in men's favor. But here's the truth. If you stop whining about double standards and start working on becoming a man of value, mentally, physically, and emotionally, you'll be just fine. Take it from an average guy who married way out of his league. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with anything that you said. I mean, this is the point. You can't control what anyone else does. You can't fix these major overarching social problems on your own. You can only fix yourself. I know it's a cliche, but it's like a self-help cliche, but it's also true. And that means that, yes, you have to become a man of value. In fact, a man of value, which also means a man of potential, right? Because if you are a young single guy, the young women of value, the ones that you should be pursuing, are going to be the ones who are attracted to your potential. And what I mean is, as a young guy, you probably aren't going to be in a great financial position. You aren't yet totally established in life. You're building towards all of that, but it's not your fault that you're not there. I mean, if you're 25, 24 years old, it's no one can hold it against you, and it would be ridiculous for a woman to hold it against you, although plenty do, but they shouldn't hold it against you that you're not well established yet in life. You're a young guy. But a good woman is one who doesn't expect you as a 24, 25-year-old guy to have everything figured out and have $1 million in the bank. A good woman can see that you're. So how do you broadcast? How do you get across potential? Well, you show that you're a striver, you're a hard worker, you're ambitious, and if you get that message across, then a good woman is going to want to get in on the ground floor with you, essentially, right? Build a life with you. So you need to project yourself as somebody with that kind of potential. And again, it's an important point because you hear from a lot of young guys who say, "Well, there's no hope because I'm not rich," and all this kind of stuff. Well, it's like you don't have to be. I mean, if you're in your 40s and you're out in the dating world and you're not well established, and you have a less than average income and all that, then that becomes a bigger problem. But as a young guy, it shouldn't really be a problem. And I know it is, again, it is for some women, but those are not women that are worth your time. A good woman is going to see the potential. And, like I've said, I've told the story many times, that's how I ended up getting married as a broke 25-year-old radio DJ. My wife, when we were first married, she used to make these absolutely wild claims of where she thought I would be in my career 10 years in the future. And it turns out that she was right. And that's a high quality woman who's looking sees ambition, sees a work ethic, and that's what attracts her. Let's see. That was the most adorable cancellation. You can tell he really wants to help these single kids. Nobody's ever described anything I've done or said as adorable before, much less the daily cancellation, which is supposed to strike fear into the hearts of those who are canceled. So you are banned from the show. Goes without saying. But thanks for watching. When you're a Daily Wire Plus All Access member, you're not just watching the daily live shows, you're part of the conversation. No ads, exclusive access to live Q&As where you ask us the questions directly, and the first look at what's coming next. That includes Parenting, Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's new series, coming this Sunday exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. You get the full entertainment library, every original film and documentary, and early access to major announcements before anyone else. Become an All Access member today at dailywireplus.com. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. On Mardi Gras in New Orleans back in 2018, a man named Derek Groves, along with an accomplice, opened fire at a neighborhood party with an AK-47. And by the time Groves was done, more than 70 shell casings were on the street and 2 men were dead. Investigators later determined that Groves had been hired to kill a heroin dealer, but he completely missed the target. Instead, he killed a couple of random bystanders. But Groves didn't let that minor detail slow him down. In the following days, he took credit for the killings on social media and bragged about his ability to commit violence with impunity. So not exactly a criminal mastermind, in other words. And so it wasn't especially surprising when, within a year, Groves was arrested and charged and convicted by a 10-2 jury vote of 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. And this was back in 2019, roughly 6 years ago. Then Groves was put on trial for 2 more crimes, 2 more times for the same crime. The first retrial was because of a new law that required unanimous jury verdicts, and the second retrial was because of a hung jury on the second trial. And then finally, in October of 2024, Groves was convicted once again for murder, this time by a unanimous jury. Now, in a first world city, this sequence of events should have guaranteed that, at a minimum, Derek Groves would immediately be shipped to a maximum security prison. I mean, we're talking about an unapologetic, confessed killer. But in New Orleans, 6 years after he was convicted of killing 2 people and 6 months after he was double convicted for the homicides, Derek Groves was not being housed in a windowless dungeon where he belonged. Instead, he was incarcerated at the now world-famous institution known as the Orleans Parish Jail, where the vast majority of the inmates are awaiting trial for relatively minor offenses. Now, if you followed the news lately, you probably know where this is going. Derek Groves was one of 10 inmates who just escaped this parish jail shortly after midnight on Friday morning. The escape began around 12:20 a.m. when the inmates broke open the door to a handicapped cell with their bare hands. And once inside, they removed a metal toilet and a sink, as well as bolts and a steel bar that protected plumbing fixtures in the cell by using toiletries and some kind of tool, according to authorities. That's how they tried this thing open. And then around 1 a.m., they crawled through a hole that had apparently been carved in the wall. And here's what the cell looked like by the end of it. You can see it there. Just to underscore the level of pure genius that's required to escape from this facility, they wrote on the wall that their escape was, quote, too easy, LOL, with the word too misspelled. This is how convicted murderer Derek Groves and 9 other criminals, most of whom are suspected of violent crimes like armed robbery and domestic violence, walked out of the parish jail. And this is a facility that obviously should not have been used to house a convicted murderer in the first place. That was the first glaring mistake that was made here. And that's just scratching the surface of the level of total incompetence and probably malice that led to this escape. I mean, suffice it to say, the guards in New Orleans have managed to achieve the impossible, which is to make Jeffrey Epstein's guards look good in comparison. We're also learning, for example, that 1/3 of the cameras in the jail simply don't work. The jail also has been reporting defective locks and doors for many years, which seems like a significant issue for a jail to have. And additionally, there's new reporting that at the time of this escape, there were 0 sheriff's deputies on duty in this portion of the jail. Not a single one. There was apparently a civilian employee who was supposed to be monitoring the cameras, but that employee conveniently stepped away for food during the escape. Additionally, no one was patrolling the facility. No one spotted them running towards the interstate. No one noticed anything was wrong in any way until a routine head count took place at 8:30 a.m., 8 hours after the escape began. They got an 8-hour head start. And even then, it took another 2 hours to inform the New Orleans Police Department. So the jail did everything possible to give these criminals a pretty massive head start. And on top of that, when they finally released the news to the public, officials reported that 11 inmates were missing before revising the number down to 10. Now, this is how you run a jail when you don't care whether violent criminals escape. And that's exactly how politicians in New Orleans think. I mean, even without a jailbreak, they've made it a habit to unleash violent felons on the public. That's why they don't even prosecute something like 50% of the violent crimes that result in an arrest. It's also why at the moment, Derek Groves and several other inmates remain at large. Now, fortunately, 4 of the 10 escapees have been captured, but that's not because of any brilliant detective work. It's because, again, these criminals are really, really dumb. So here's footage of 2 of the escapees walking through the French Quarter wearing hoodies and jeans in 80-degree weather less than 48 hours after the escape. You can see it here. Not exactly the most subtle disguise, as you can see, nor is it the most inconspicuous location they could have chosen. I mean, imagine getting out of jail and immediately going to the single biggest tourist attraction in the state with cameras on every block when everyone's looking for you and just walking around the street. This is the level of intellect that managed to outwit New Orleans' prison system. Here's another guy, another example. This is a guy named Robert Moody, and you can see him. He was caught. Again, not exactly a criminal mastermind, wearing the most noticeable outfit he could find. And he has the same facial hair and hairstyle that he had when he was caught. Like, one of the advantages of having dreadlocks and a goatee if you escape from prison is that you can shave that off and drastically change your appearance. He didn't even bother to do that. You know, the guy escaped prison, went back to downtown New Orleans, and just hung around until they caught him. The level of planning and ingenuity here is not terribly impressive. I mean, this is not exactly Harrison Ford and The Fugitive that we're dealing with. And not to belabor the point, but these criminals can't spell. They appear to be incapable of self-preservation. And yet, that raises the question, how exactly are 6 of them still not caught? And how did these morons escape in the first place? And in order to answer those questions, that's where you have to look at the leadership involved, namely the sheriff, the police superintendent, and the police captain of this district, as well as the mayor. So we'll start with the captain. This is a woman whose name is Stephanie Minto Gibson. For reasons that remain very unclear, she is doing this press conference wearing like Riddler glasses. But let's listen to what she has to say.
I am Major Stephanie Minto Gibson, and I oversee the Crime Victims Unit for the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. Once I was notified about the escapees, I immediately gathered a team of experienced staff, and we started calling victims and survivors just to make sure that they are aware of what was going on and that they are safe. Most of the victims were very grateful for the calls. They graciously thank us. We additionally sent our detectives to their homes for more safety measures, and that alone speak measures.
Most of the victims were very grateful for the calls, says the police captain. And that makes you wonder, what did the other victims say? Did they ask you how the hell you allowed several violent criminals out of jail? That seems likely, especially now that we're learning that some of the prosecutors who secured Derek Groves' conviction have actually fled the state because they fear that he's going to hunt them down and kill them, or at least randomly shoot two bystanders while trying to kill them. Quoting from NOLA.com, 2 Orleans Parish attorneys who helped secure recent convictions against an escapee from the Orleans Parish Jail have fled the state, along with their families, fearing for their safety after last week's jailbreak. District Attorney Jason Williams said Monday. Williams also said that he was personally afraid for his own safety. Williams declined to identify the lawyers who fled, their rank, or say if they've been given police protection. Several family members of one of Groves' shooting victims have also fled the state, close quote. So maybe those people weren't appreciative when the NOPD called to notify them about what had happened. We'd only guess. And maybe these prosecutors now regret releasing thousands of violent criminals in the name of social justice. Who knows? But one thing we know for sure is that nobody in the police department is feeling any amount of shame over what just occurred, because a reporter asked them to apologize, and instead of getting an apology, here's what happened.
Sheriff, do you want to speak to the people? I think everybody's live in here. Do you want to say you're sorry to the people of New Orleans for having this happen? I mean, we've heard from you several times today, but do you want to offer any kind of contrition or apology to people for something like this happening?
Well, first we have to find out exactly what happened and how they got out. We think this was intentional. There is much more than meets the eye in this investigation.
Did you catch that? Over at the New Orleans Police Department, according to their crack investigative team, at this hour, they believe that the prison escape was intentional. So these 10 inmates didn't randomly walk out of a hole in a random cell by accident. They weren't like going for a stroll and just ended up outside the prison. That seems highly unlikely at this moment. That's the current state of the investigation, according to the sheriff's office. But they don't want to get ahead of themselves. They don't want to say whether it was an inside job, at least not yet. They certainly don't want to apologize in any way, even after they've become an international laughingstock for a second time this year. Now, the first time, of course, was when the police superintendent admitted live on national television that she had no idea that the department possessed archer barriers, which can stop terrorists from driving vehicles onto sidewalks. And those barriers probably would have been useful to prevent the ISIS terrorist from mowing down 14 people on Bourbon Street. But there's no cause for alarm, because after the attack, the superintendent realized at that point where the barriers were located. Watch.
What you see behind us is what we call hardening the target. So we have brought in heavy trucks. You will see when you go down Bourbon, you will see yellow, what we call archers, and they're along the sidewalk. And that would be to be preventive if someone had, or if this particular terrorist went around up on the sidewalk, that's what that would do. But we want our community to feel confident and know they are confidently safe. And that's what we're going to do. So right now, I can declare to you that the Bourbon Street is open.
Chief, where did those archers come from?
Sorry?
Those yellow archers, where did they come from?
Actually, we have them. I didn't know about them, but we have them. And so we have been able now to put them out.
Okay.
So that's 65-year-old police chief Ann Kirkpatrick for you. She was fired from her job running Oakland's police department after they lost confidence in her. Then after getting hired in New Orleans, she promptly ran over 2 people in the French Quarter while on duty. And then after a terrorist attack, she admits that the police department had the tools to prevent it, but didn't realize they had access to them. And despite all this, Ann Kirkpatrick was not fired. She wasn't punished in any way. Instead, she received awards like this one. This is a real post from the New Orleans Police Department's official social media feed. And it says, "Congratulations, Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick, who was recognized today at the 3rd Annual Women in Leadership Awards. Orleans Parish Sheriff Susan Hudson bestowed the honors as part of Women's History Month celebrations. Well done, Chief." Yes, after running over a couple of innocent people and then admitting she could have done a lot more to prevent a terrorist attack, she received an award. that's because the award wasn't based on any of her impressive accomplishments or her job performance. It was based on the fact that she's a woman. That was enough to earn her the accolade. And now she's one of the people in charge of capturing a bunch of homicidal fugitives. I mean, you'd feel better with, a guy who gives off like the vibe of Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive. Instead, you get an elderly woman who gives off the vibe of a stern librarian. And unsurprisingly, in the wake of this jailbreak, Ann Kirkpatrick is once again bringing eternal shame onto the city of New Orleans. Watch.
We were not going to wait. So when we learned about it, we knew the immediacy to at least inform the public. Even if we didn't have pictures ready and all of the names ready, we didn't have that either. But we need to let our public know. Again, if you see something and you feel that it's not, a hunch is okay, folks, you just call us and we're going to check that out.
So again, she's admitting to the fact that she's incapable of doing her job. I mean, how exactly would the police department, after 10 inmates break out of jail, be unable to immediately inform the public of the names of the inmates who are missing? I mean, it's pretty simple. You tell everyone to go back to their cells, you identify the cells that are empty or missing inmates, and then you look up who belongs in those cells. I mean, the process should take like 10 minutes, if not, I mean, you would hope in a jail, if an inmate is not there, they could tell you in 10 seconds who's missing. But in this case, the police chief admits that the department simply didn't have that information as of 10 a.m., more than 2 hours after the escape was first noticed at the jail, and more than 9 hours after it unfolded in the middle of the night. Meanwhile, the mayor of the city, the hopelessly corrupt LaToya Cantrell, was completely missing in action. Her office didn't put out a statement for several days. She didn't appear in public at all. When she finally appeared at a press conference, the first question came from a reporter who wanted to know why she was hiding. Watch.
Mayor Cantrell, this is the first time we've seen you publicly since this happened. What would you like to say to the citizens of New Orleans?
So first off, this isn't the first time that you've seen me, or the public, I would say, has seen me since this incident occurred.
I mean, she's literally hiding behind the guy. Her head's poking. She's actually hiding behind someone else so no one notices her. Now, at this point, somebody needs to point out the obvious, so I'll do it. Every single senior official involved in this debacle is a woman. There's the female superintendent, the female sheriff, the female mayor, the female captain. 3 out of the 4 of these women are black. Now, in the DEI community, that's known as a very diverse group. But it's the kind of thing that does not happen by accident. Okay, from a purely statistical perspective, it is simply impossible that these are the most competent people who could be holding these jobs. It's simply impossible that you were really just hiring based on merit, and it just so happened that every senior official involved ends up being a woman. On the other hand, it's guaranteed that, more capable people were passed over solely because of their skin color or their gender. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that this prison break wouldn't have happened if men were in charge. There have been prison breaks involving prisons run by males, although they're usually a lot more hardcore and complicated than this one. I mean, think of the Alcatraz escape back in the 1960s, where they spent months breaking into the ventilation system, built a makeshift raft out of prison raincoats, and then drowned, allegedly, soon after they got in the water. Instead, what I'm saying is that you don't accidentally end up in a situation where all of the officials in charge of capturing a fugitive are women. But that's the case right now in New Orleans. That's why they can't figure out how to keep their inmates inside the prisons or how to find them once they've escaped. In recent history, if recent history is any indication, as a direct result of this colossal failure, the NOPD is probably going to give every single one of these women another award. Well done, ladies. You oversaw one of the worst prison breaks in U.S. history. Girl power. That's what the police department will be tweeting a few months from now. But for people who have to, live under the rule of these complete and total morons, like the prosecutors and victims who've literally fled the state in fear, girl power has lost its appeal. What they need, and what cities like New Orleans need, is competence. Not a bunch of clueless women who congratulate themselves while their city falls apart. And that is why the women who have just allowed one of the biggest prison breaks in American history are today canceled. That will do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
John Bickley here, Daily Wire editor-in-chief. Wake up every morning with our show, Morning Wire, where we bring you all the news that you need to know in 15 minutes or less. Join me and my co-host Georgia Howe for daily coverage of all the biggest stories on Morning Wire.